So much of that criticism comes from within your own ranks, progressive side of politics.
It's going to be an interesting week for Justin Trudeau. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David, and today's top stories, we've got Trudeau appointing a brand new campaign manager. We've also got Stephen Guilbeault getting grilled by Vassy. We've got a couple other clips here, a couple other stories. So let's jump into this. First off, we got Trudeau appoints new Liberal campaign director. Who is it? It's Andrew Bevin. With Thanksgiving going on, the Liberals will be on break, but I won't be. I got you covered here. So Trudeau's now beefing up his campaign directors after Jeremy Broadhurst stepped down.
A group of backbench MPs is in discussions to formally ask Trudeau to resign. It follows months of growing discontent. Andrew Bevin, a longtime Liberal insider, he got his start in the 1990s before going to work on Stéphane Dion's leadership campaign and then later served as Chief of Staff to Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne. Most recently, he's been Chief of Staff to Chrystia Freeland and a senior advisor to Trudeau. Marjorie Mitchell is the new Deputy Campaign Director. She is the Prime Minister's Deputy Chief of Staff, and the party says she has deep roots in Quebec, a key battleground for the next election. Joining me now is Scott Reid, our CTV News political commentator. Scott, thanks as always for joining us. I don't know how happy a Thanksgiving it is for the Liberals right now, but they have a couple of gifts. They have those two new appointments. Your thoughts on them?
Well, I think it's no mistake that they were made over the course of the weekend in light of these reports of caucus discomfort, a secret letter possibly signed by as many as 30 MPs, although no one can actually detect or find any of those MPs. But clearly the Prime Minister is a brewing crisis of confidence within his own caucus, and so you see these announcements being made. I'll just add this. I've known Andrew Bevin for 25 years. He is as smart and as resourceful a political advisor as you're going to find. But look at these polls, man. Look at the job that lays ahead. It's going to require a magician to pull a Liberal rabbit out of this particular political hat.
There's no way they can come back from this. There's not a chance. It doesn't matter. The trust is lost with the Canadian people. The Liberal Party's in a terrible place. They can't recover from this. It will take probably not only if years, but a decade or more to recover from what Justin Trudeau has done to the Liberals. He's likely created a bunch of lifelong Conservatives from how badly he's treated Canadians.
And so what we're saying is there's not a lot of hope. Why would he?
There's definitely not a lot of hope for these glasses either.
So why would he take the job then?
Well, he's currently working as Chief of Staff to Chrystia Freeland. He is a senior advisor to the Prime Minister. I can tell you from personal experience, when the phone rings, especially on a long weekend, when there are headline stories about the government being in crisis, and the Prime Minister says, I've got a job for you that I'd like you to take, it's awfully darn hard to say no. So I think that, he's the kind of guy who responds to a challenge, maybe not one quite of this scale, but when the PM asks you to slip on the jersey, you hit the ice.
All right. And he's got some big challenges ahead of him. These MPs, like you mentioned, we don't know who they are. I'm sure they're being located and found out, and there's conversations going on. What's unfolding right now behind the scenes?
We have to remember for the past week, the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff were away. And one way of looking at that is almost like you left the castle unguarded with the drawbridge down. Members of Parliament in the government caucus have been growing increasingly frustrated. Since the by-elections that you mentioned, particularly the one in June in Toronto, St. Paul's, really the response from Trudeau and the team around him has been, we're going to do more of the same. There's no fundamental change in terms of those around the Prime Minister, no fundamental change in terms of the direction of the government. It's key policies like the consumer carbon tax, no change, obviously, with respect to the Prime Minister himself, whether he will lead the party in the next election, and no change among cabinet ministers. And I think members of Parliament, particularly when they didn't have the Prime Minister to eyeball them, walked away from caucus this week and said, something must change.
Nothing has changed, including the amount of scandals that keep coming up, not just the existing ones. Pick one, Guilbeault, Bolsonaro, Trudeau. I mean, their scandals keep mounting, but nothing they do makes anything better for Canadians. In fact, everything they do makes everything worse for Canadians. No wonder their polling numbers are so bad, but it's shocking that there's still 18% of Canadians who support this guy.
We must make it happen. That's what's behind this. How hard will they push? Will they come forward and be named? Will they be satiated, at least in temporary terms, with the appointment of Bevin as campaign director? We don't know. But we do know that this is a real threat. The Prime Minister's facing it. He hasn't faced an internal challenge like this since he became Prime Minister, and it's very serious.
Is it enough for him to give pause and maybe consider the idea?
It may well be. My guess is that it will harden his resolve to stay, that he will get his back up and he will bring his fist down. But that's a very delicate job when it comes to something like this. If you're the prime minister and you're the leader of the caucus, you have to figure out what the exact blend of diplomacy and discipline is. On the one hand, you need to show that you're strong and that you do belong at the front of the room. On the other hand, there are real frustrations on the part of these members of parliament. They are able to read the polls. They know that they're marching into cannon fire, and they're looking for some indication of change from the prime minister. I think a little humility and probably some outreach would be called for, but we'll have to see how the PM chooses to play his cards. And I'll just add this, Roger, what makes this harder and very tricky politically is that it's an off week. That means the members of parliament are off the leash. They're in their ridings. They're free to phone and collect and connect, meet with whom they wish. That's harder for the PM and his office to therefore exert control.
Is anyone really surprised that all these Liberal MPs are angry? They're going to be losing their jobs because of Justin Trudeau. This is a multimillionaire who's quite literally throwing all of these people's careers out the window. He's ruining dozens of careers for his own ego. Doesn't matter now, as a swing voter, I will never vote Liberal NDP ever again. That's the Canadian people right there. Get rid of Freeland too. Too little, too late. I would never vote Liberals or NDP. Nobody smart and actually competent would touch this job with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. Next up, we got Vassy here absolutely grilling Stephen Guilbeault. So the carbon tax thing, the parliamentary budget officer came out last week and basically spelled it out that it's worse for more people. He said it on Vassy's show. He said that our impact does nothing for the world, only 2%. He said it. Guilbeault is still doubling down, and Vassy presses on it.
You said upon the release of the updated report that it, quote, shows that carbon pricing is the most cost-effective way to fight climate change. The report concludes, as we said in that introduction, that when the impact on the economy is factored in, the carbon tax ends up being a net loss for Canadians. So how can you reach that conclusion?
Well, two things, Vassy. First, I'm not the one saying that carbon pricing is the most effective way to fight climate change. Page 9 of the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report says that most economists agree that it is the best way to fight climate change. Second, in the introduction, you said that the Parliamentary Budget Officer, when he looks at all of the other indirect cost or benefits to the economy, well, in fact, his report specifically says that he doesn't look at all the other indirect economic impact of carbon pricing. He does not look at the benefits of carbon pricing and the billions of dollars that it has generated in investment, thousands of jobs created. Like he specifically says, I didn't look at that. He also says, in terms of indirect economic impact, I'm not looking at the impacts of climate change to the Canadian households, like how much this is impacting their budget on an annual basis. He says this is something I might do into the future, but he's not doing it now. What he says is when you look at the direct cost, he says most Canadians are better off than with carbon pricing than without carbon pricing.
Yeah, I guess
He just keeps lying. This guy, just throw him out of the government. Just an absolute thief. He was a criminal before the government. He's a criminal during the government. He'll be a criminal after leaving the government.
Parse apart that answer. Yes, when looking at even the indirect costs, right? So the debate has often said, you know, the price it attaches to the extra cost to food and stuff. Even when he factors that in, the rebate for the majority of Canadians will outweigh the cost that they pay. It's when he takes into account numbers provided, for example, by the government about the economic impact of the consumer portion of this, the impact it will have, for example, on investment income and incomes more generally, that he arrives at the conclusion he did. You pointed out two things. First of all, that he didn't model out the benefits or the jobs created associated with the carbon tax, nor the impact of climate change. On the first, and we'll go through both, on the first, what is the model for that? I have never heard from your government a specific amount of jobs that this tax specifically creates, because I think it's clear, just based on political reaction from like-minded premiers and politicians, not conservatives in this case. I'm thinking of David Eby and Wab Kinew and Jagmeet Singh and Andrew Furey, as well as people who are just existing in the world running small businesses, that they certainly don't feel that this has been responsible for economic development, for example.
Look how much this liar blinks.
We have published numerous analysis of the economic benefits, and there's been a number of independent analysis that have been published. But the consensus, or the rough estimates right now, is that carbon pricing is generating about $25 billion of annual investment.
This guy just pulls random numbers out of his butt. Blink, blink, blink. This guy's stressed out. That's why he's blinking so much. He knows he's having to go on this show and just lie.
technologies, in renewable energy, in zero-emission vehicle technologies, batteries, and so on and so forth. So that's and the other interesting thing about the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report is that he points to the fact that most Canadians are better off, except the wealthiest. And I think that's why
this guy just lies through his teeth. He's like, she literally just quoted him, and that's not what he said. This guy just makes up crap. Why would everyday Canadians have to suffer to prop up a specific industry? That makes no sense. I don't get a cut of Stellantis stock or Honda or Ford or whatever. Why would I have to suffer? Why does everyone else have to suffer for these businesses? What a bunch of crap.
If we're looking for a reason as to why Pierre Poilievre is so opposed to this, that's why. Because his rich friends, recently oil executive CEOs organized a fundraiser for Pierre Poilievre. They're putting pressure on him to put an end to this. I can assure you, Vassy, that oil executives aren't organizing fundraisers for me.
This is a load of crap. This is why you guys keep dropping the polls. You just keep lying.
Happening. So I think if we're looking for a reason why the Conservative Party is so obsessed with carbon pricing, that's the reason.
But actually, when you're looking at the fiscal side of things, yes, it does so that there is that there is a progressive impact. When you're looking at the fiscal and economic portion of things or analysis of things, it's very broad based that Canadians are worse off. It's not just the highest quintile. Is it perhaps that, and I separate the Conservative criticism for a moment because I know that's what your government likes to focus on. So much of that criticism comes from within your own ranks, progressive side of politics. Like, is Wab Kinew against this because he wants to help his rich friends? Is Andrew Furey against this because he wants to help his rich friends?
No, I think in both the case of Premier Furey and the NDP, whether it's the NDP in Manitoba, BC, or federal NDP, they cave to the pressure. I mean, there is a lot of pressure on progressive politicians around this. So the Parliamentary Budget Officer says it's the most...
No, so what really happened is those leaders were just weak and they just went along with it. And now that they're being pushed right to the wall where they're going to lose their job, they're finally saying something. That's what's going on. Guilbeault is a liar. I can't believe he's going on here and lying so much when it's so easy to fact check the guy. Vassy's fact checking him live as he's doing this, and he just seems to glaze over it like it didn't even happen.
Most effective way of fighting climate change. Most economists who have written about this says it's the most effective way to fight climate change, including a Nobel laureate who got his laureate specifically for his work on carbon pricing. But the Conservative Party has decided to put pressure. And we saw Jagmeet Singh, for example, cave on carbon pricing after Pierre Poilievre came out and said, you should stop supporting carbon pricing. And that's what Jagmeet Singh did. And the same thing, unfortunately, with Premier Eby, for whom I have the greatest respect in British Columbia. We saw the rise of the Conservative Party in British Columbia. Same type of argument as federal conservatives on carbon pricing, and we saw the BC NDP cave under that pressure. It is, it would be much easier for me, Vassy, from a political perspective, to say, okay, we'll stop doing that. But it's the right thing to do. If you're serious about climate change, if you're not serious about climate change, like Pierre Poilievre, then of course you don't want to do anything.
We already know, if you're serious, what we should be doing here. Just export more LNG to China. This guy's serious about money laundering, dirty deals with China, stealing our money, growing his investments with Cycle Capital, eco-green slush fund, scandals and corruption. That's all he's serious about.
You don't want to put measures to fight climate change, and the planet and Canada can go to hell in a handbasket. He doesn't care. But if you're serious about fighting climate change, this is not the only way, but the best way of doing it. It should be the number one.
Guilbeault, seriously, you can go to hell in a handbasket. We don't want you in our government. Trudeau quite literally hired an extremist environmental activist to run the Environmental Department of Canada. So later on in this interview, they start talking about home heating oil and all the incentives and all that kind of stuff. Vassy called them out, saying that they did it as a political move, the carve out, and then he came back and saying, oh no, there's more people in Montreal that have home heating oil. This just turns into a real crap show here.
And what we realized with home heating oil is that most of the people who are still using this form of heating systems tend to be poorer, and not have the money necessary to invest into more efficient and cleaner heating systems. The pause is to help us put in place measures, and we've deployed hundreds of millions of dollars across the country, from BC to the Atlantic provinces, to the north, to help people make that transition, so that, I mean, if you're using this tool to incentivize change, but people can't change because they don't have the mean to it, then it may be working from an environmental perspective, but it's certainly not working from a social perspective.
But that's kind of the point, right? That's the point that people in other parts of the country that aren't even using just home heating oil feel. They don't feel like it's easy to buy an electric car, for example, yet. And I know that your government has plans in place to help incentivize that further and help make that more affordable. But right now, they just don't feel it is. And they feel like unless they elect Liberals, that falls on deaf ears.
I mean, they want to force everyone to have electric cars by 2035. The electrical grid doesn't support that many electric cars. It doesn't even support like half of that many cars. And they don't even have a plan to beef up our electrical grid to support it. These guys are just all idiots.
Pardon me.
Sales of electric vehicles have quadrupled in the last 3 years in Canada. In Quebec, 1 in 5 vehicles sold right now is an electric vehicle. In British Columbia, it's 1 in
Production of electric vehicles is plummeting right now.
4. It's happening. More and more people are moving to heat pumps from coast to coast to coast.
Who was it? Was it Mark Carney, who's one investor in one of those heat pump companies? Only the Liberals, they only push heat pumps. There's other solutions. They don't only want to push heat pumps because they're financial interests of one of their own den of thieves
across the country, and we've deployed a system to help them do that. So we're not just saying climate change and fighting climate change is a societal challenge. So of course the federal government has a role to play. Provincial governments, most of them aren't, but they should be part of this. But we want to work with the public, which is why it's kind of a carrot and stick approach. So we put in place regulations and system like carbon pricing, but at the same time we are helping people with, again, hundreds of millions of dollars, whether it's, and in fact, in terms of home energy retrofit, it's in the billions of dollars, heat pump programs, electric vehicles, renewable energy.
Stephen Guilbeault just goes on to ramble and ramble and ramble. This guy is probably one of the biggest liars on the Liberal bench behind Trudeau. I guess when you're used to being a criminal, it's easier to lie. This insane activist should be in jail, not on the news. There's no debate, axe attacks on the Liberals. 400 million went to Guilbeault's Liberal friends. It also went to himself, Cycle Capital. I mean, you look through these comments here, every single one, Guilbeault's full of it. It's just liar, liar, liar. You don't even have to stop. They're just another one of the criminals. They have no trust of the people. The Liberals are a bunch of liars, and it's quite clear to everyone. The gig is up. We've got an old clip here of Justin Trudeau shared by Ezra Levant. It says, why did Sophie Trudeau tell Justin to kiss Jian Ghomeshi? Why did Justin wink at her, and why did the CBC delete this from their website?
Because you're very handsome. Thank you, Justin.
Kiss him.
I think because...
What was that? See this little wink right there? What is going on there? Is this their little secret playtime they used to do or something? This is bizarre, kind of creepy and weird. Trudeau did not in fact follow Sophie's advice to kiss this guy, Jian. Instead, he kissed the show's host, Danny Turcotte. Dude, this is creepy. Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking here. This is all very creepy. Next up, we even have Bryan Adams ripping to the Liberals. Because the Online Streaming Act here, it says Canadian Radio, Television and Telecom Communications Commission announced that the online streaming services that have earned $25 million and operate in Canada would be forced to pay 5% of their revenues made in the country to the federal government to help pay for various programs like Indigenous broadcasting. So basically, they're going to force streaming music to be more expensive in Canada. And that's exactly what Bryan Adams here says. It says it's a disgrace. The Canadian government's new music streaming tax is going to cost you more to listen to music that you love online. You got Bryan Adams ripping you now, Liberals. Next up, we got this here posted by Table Salt. It says Quebec introduces anti-India PR law and caps permanent residency invitations from any single country to 25% of the total number of invitations sent. Permanent residency invitations to foreign workers from a single country will be limited to 25% of the total invitations sent. They want to limit the amount of people from India and Quebec. This is a bold move. Next up, we got this posted by Wyatt Claypool here. It says, oh, hold up, the Main Street Research BC election model just updated and got even worse for Premier David Eby and his riding of Vancouver Point Grey. This is one of the most rich neighborhoods in this entire region, if not the most, maybe only second to West Vancouver. So David Eby's coming from the land of the rich, and he's getting kicked out. Look at this, the Conservatives 46.5%, Eby's down to 38.8%. Get this bum out of here. Would be huge if Eby lost his seat. Don't let up, get out and vote Conservatives. I'm going to go vote right after I finish recording this.
And going out and saying, hey, you know, look at this group of people. We should target this group of people for hate. There's particularly deserving of hate. And for that group of people to be Palestinian children is deeply disturbing. And actually, it meets the definition of the criminal code charge of hate speech.
Okay, so he's talking about, there's some conservative candidate that made a tweet sometime saying something bad about Palestinians, saying the kids were inbred or whatever. It's a dumb comment. It should have never been said. It didn't come from the leader of BC, though. And so we have this guy here saying that it should be considered hate speech. Well, what about calling death to Canada and death to Canadians? What the heck is that, David Eby? This guy didn't even come out and say he was going to seriously address this. It was a single one-line tweet that says, I condemn that. That's pathetic. You're the leader of this province. You didn't come out with a strong message saying you're going to wipe the floor with those fools. You know why? It's because he's in bed with them. You know, it's right here.
Death to Canada!
You know, he doesn't seem to care about this because he likes these people. I mean, here he is sitting with one of them. So the hypocrisy of him not dealing with the situation and then calling out the dumb comment that the Conservative made, it's like the main difference here is this guy's in charge and he could actually do something about it. This is a guy who has laid out all this plan about how he's going to make things great. It's like, dude, you've been in power for so long. You could have done all these things. And you look in the comments here, everyone's posting all this stuff here. And here's the one just to directly address it. So the comment was about inbreeding and Palestine, and it says inbreeding by country. The top countries are right in that region, Palestine. While that is a rude and insensitive comment, here's David Eby inciting hate against our own people. Remember when we had the world event and those V things, the V, I'm gonna have to bleep out some of this video.
I don't see any benefit in the members' policies of compensating anti-vaxxers in our province who defy public health orders.
He then goes on to say that we have a shortage of healthcare workers. Where'd they all go? We have to train up new ones. No, you need to bring back the ones we have that you insulted and kicked out of our province, essentially. A lot of these people have left. They're either travel nurses or they've gone to Alberta or other places where they don't get demonized by their own premier. You know, just as it says here by Brett, I'm so sick of listening to this phony hypocrite talking about other people's hate. I'm sick of the media that allows him to get away with it. Yeah, he is such a pompous, arrogant fool who always thinks he's right. Next up, we got this posted by Paul Ratchford, Conservative here. He absolutely destroys David Eby at this little debate here.
We have a lot of people living in their cars in our community. I don't know if you've noticed on 4th, on Blanca. They used to live on 16th along Pacific Spirit.
It is a real tragedy that there's people living in their cars, and it's on your watch.
Yeah.
It's been 7 years now. You know, there's only so long you can go on with the Smoke and Mirrors Act, the deflections, pretending like, you know, we care and we're going to make something happen, but nothing ever happens to actually improve people's lives. That's the issue here. And when we look at our views at Broadway, you know,
this is a man who's very uncomfortable here. You know, the higher you scratch up on your face when you're getting ripped a new one by the guy next to you, not feeling too good.
It's a great example. There's a neighborhood group there that issued a call for change and a new direction in this province, a direction that actually, you know, addresses the needs of people. Because congregating at-risk people, you know, into 129 units of SRO-style housing doesn't make sense for at-risk people. It doesn't make sense for the community. It simply doesn't work. And that should be common sense. I've been glad to see a little bit of a move in the direction of the involuntary care side, because we do need to go in that direction. And there are people who are suffering from serious issues, and they're a risk to themselves and the communities. We saw in downtown Vancouver, again, the case of the person who had over 60 interactions with the police, and they were in serious mental health decline before they went and chopped off a hand and killed the person. That's totally unacceptable. And it's on your watch, Davey. It's on your watch.
This man doesn't care. All he cares about is power and himself. He's an arrogant fool, just like Trudeau. Got this graph posted here. Private sector job growth, weakest in Canada, weakest ever in BC. Look at the numbers here. This is what we're looking at. British Columbia versus Alberta. This is wild. Next up, we got some more of these guys doing a show of power, blocking our streets.
What's that?
I'm wondering what would happen if an ambulance came flying down this road at full speed. What happens then? There's a church right in front of them. Power and control is what it's all about. How to make an entire country hate you. Yeah, that's... Next up, we got some news here from Elon Musk. So this is one of his giant rockets. You can see Falcon engines on the bottom here. I know this is not political, but this is some amazing stuff. This is the first time ever that they've been able to catch this thing with the tower. So typically the other rockets land themselves. Because it's so big, they have a tower catch this thing.
We're now down to 3 Raptor engines. We can see those chopsticks
That is wild. So you can see these guys are freaking out here. So this basically takes us one step closer to actually going to Mars. That's what this really means. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week as they have a bit of a week off, but Justin Trudeau will be making moves in the background because he's got to damper things a bit with his own caucus, and it makes it even worse because they're all out and about. They're not in Parliament this week, so it's not like he has easy access to all of them. Buckle up, we'll see what happens this week, especially since we've got the Block's deadline looming as well. Perhaps this could be the week Justin Trudeau steps down.